Hello. Today I'd like to share my experience with weight loss and how I was able to move through what would probably be called an eating disorder. This story is going to fall into three parts. One, I'm going to go over how I started to lose weight and the kind of regimen I began, if you even want to call it that. It was just kind of a fun undertaking I took, and it was working and it was healthy. Then we're going to go to how it turned sour, and I basically ended up in a vicious cycle where I was gorging myself and vomiting afterwards. And then we're going to go to how it all turned around. Basically how one insight that came to me seemingly out of nowhere was able to change everything regarding my relationship to food. It was able to break the cycle basically overnight. And this story is going to be quite detailed, simply because I believe that, whoever's listening could perhaps put themselves in my shoes at the time and take away certain things that resonate with them from the life experience. And if some things don't resonate with you, that's totally fine. Just kind of, be open and see what feels right. And if some things don't, that's totally fine as well. Just take what works for you and leave the rest behind. Whether you're an adult or a teenager and you see yourself as someone struggling with weight, or you feel like you have an unhealthy relationship to food, perhaps this story might be of value to you. So to give you some context, I was a pretty heavy kid from about 8 to 14, and it really wasn't something I cared about. I ate whatever I want. I ignored what my mom said for the most part. And even when I was teased about it, I don't recall taking too much of it personally at the time. There were, of course, times where I did take it personally. There were definitely things that hurt my feelings, that triggered feelings of wanting to hide away and things of that nature. But for the most part, it just wasn't really on my mind. I was just doing whatever else I was doing. Then at 13, I found myself at the doctor's office just for kind of a routine physical. And for the first time, I had someone of medical authority say, you might want to look into losing weight. And she gave me a long list of reasons, and I took it to heart. I really did actually feel motivated after that to do so. So I joined the YMCA, and I just started kind of finding fun ways to exercise. I don't even remember if I thought of it that way. But I remember I just went to the pool, and I went to the deep end where you're allowed to like jump in, and it was a little scary at first, but then I jumped in and it was just this exhilaration, and I basically just came out and did it again in maybe a different way, different pose, cannonball, whatever, and it was just a blast. I would just practice like standing underwater and holding my breath for as long as possible, and eventually I became a really good swimmer. I went to the racquetball courts they had, which are just like these rooms, and you get a tennis racket and a bouncy ball, and you hit the ball and it bounces back maybe to the other side, and you got to run and get it. It's kind of like you're playing tennis with a wall. It's kind of cool. I guess you could also play with someone else. There's rules involved that I don't ask me. But that's what I did, and I was having a lot of fun. I was like kicking off the wall. I had music playing in my head. It was just these fun ways of exercising that I found for myself. And I did, ease up on a lot of the junk I was eating as well. Not that I didn't eat it at all, but I did just take almost kind of just natural steps, like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to also just cut back on this stuff a little bit. Nothing structured, nothing crazy. And, weight started to fall off. I started to hit a growth spurt as well. And I remember just feeling really good after the gym. Every time I went home, I was like, oh yeah, this is, just great. So it was good. And then freshman year of high school came around, and maybe sometime in the middle of that, a classmate made a comment that I was chubby. And at that point, I was like, really? Still? I really didn't, I was hoping at least I wouldn't have been seen in that way anymore, I think at that time I really wanted to just kind of not have that superimposed on me at the time. I wanted to just kind of be seen as, one of you guys, or normal. I didn't want to have that kind of cut-off label be put on me. At least that's how I interpreted it, you know. So that made me uncomfortable at the time, and I think that probably triggered me kind of looking into what more I can do. And so here's where things kind of started to turn sour. I think I maybe did some light research on nutrition, and based on this very limited research, I devised a very unhealthy diet for myself. I did not think it was unhealthy, I didn't understand, but looking back at it now, it was basically malnutrition. And you know, I thought I knew what I was doing. I thought that based on my weight and height and whatever, I was getting the right amount of nutrients and stuff, and I just wasn't. And I was hungry most of the time, and especially when you're, you know, 14, so much is still developing that depriving yourself of all this vital stuff is not good, and I'm sure contributed to the intensity of the emotional turmoil I would go through several months later, which we'll get to as well. So I went on this diet, and somehow within that time, this idea kind of crept in that, you know, I shouldn't even want this unhealthy stuff. I shouldn't even want chips or fried foods or candy. I shouldn't want any of this stuff. And of course, I just immediately, you know, said, oh, that stuff's unhealthy. I mean, I think in moderation, not necessarily, but I had this idea that, you know, I shouldn't even want any of this stuff. What's wrong with you? You know, just follow the diet. And of course, naturally, I did crave that stuff. I did want that stuff because it was delicious, you know, and all I was eating was bland kind of, you know, meals that weren't even satisfying the like natural hunger of the body. And, you know, I'm a human, and we like things that taste good. So what ended up happening is I would follow this, you know, unhealthy, to some extent, starvation diet for a few days, maybe 5 days at most, and then I would give in and I would get some candy and I would experience this rush, and then I would gorge myself. And I remember filling up bowls, cereal bowls of like shredded wheat, Reese's cups, milk, peanut butter, other stuff probably, and just filling myself up to the point where I could barely walk. My stomach was stretched and I was like, oh God. And I felt like I had to make myself vomit just to like be able to walk again and feel okay. And then when everything was said and done, I felt horrible. I felt like I took 10 steps back. I would look in the mirror, I'm like, did I undo everything in this one night, you know, which is also a little ridiculous. And it was very, you know, it was very unpleasant. And that continued for probably at least 6 months. And eventually I fell into a very deep depression and started experiencing panic attacks on a daily basis. Now, this was triggered by a breakup, my first relationship and my first breakup. You know, looking back at it now, it was nothing huge or serious or big relative to relationships that, like real relationships I've had, but it was a, you know, it was a real relationship in the sense that it was a connection I had. And at the time, you know, getting the attention of a girl was like, I can't believe this is even happening to me. I was just on cloud 9, you know? And so suddenly that was cut short. And I took it very hard and I didn't expect to. And then all this other stuff kind of came along with it. The panic and all that stuff. That seemed, I just didn't understand what was happening. And again, I'm sure that this malnutrition and the cycle I was going through was not helping that at all. So I don't remember how, but I ended up at the weight room at the YMCA. Maybe I did some light reading about it, and you know, I stretched, very important, and I started exercising, started weightlifting, and I think 20-30 minutes into it, I was doing military presses, really just giving it my all. And I remember just feeling this relief come over me, like, oh, I felt good, I felt relief, I felt maybe even some exhilaration for the first time in a long time at that point, and I was like, okay, I gotta keep doing this, you know? So at that time, weightlifting kind of became my relief. And so I started reading more about it. I started reading about bodybuilding and the nutritional side of that. And through doing more research, I devised a more balanced diet for myself. And it was what was called a bulking phase. I don't know how things are these days. I don't know how the world might have changed, but at that time, at least in bodybuilding, it was very common to have a bulking phase where your diet is focused on gaining as much muscle as possible, and you'll also gain fat, but it doesn't matter because then several months down the line you're going to go on a cutting phase where your diet switches up and your exercise regimen switches up, and the idea is to maintain all the muscle you've gained as much as you can while dropping as much fat as possible. So I think even just that notion kind of helped soften this obsession I had with I had to lose as much fat as possible, because this kind of gave you permission to gain a little. So I think that helped. And perhaps I was also introduced to this notion of cheat days at the time. And again, I don't know what the terminology or popular approaches are these days, but at that time in dieting, it was common to give yourself what's called a cheat day, where you basically follow a structured diet for a week or whatever your construction is, and then once a week or whatever, you allow yourself to have whatever meal you want. And so that already helped soften things. Because I think part of the driving force behind the gorging, I think, was also the sense that I had, and I wasn't really necessarily aware of it, or maybe I was, I don't recall, but it was the sense that I had that I gotta, I already gave in, I might as well just go all the way. I'm not gonna be able to have it again, so let's just go all the way. Take as much as I can, take it while the getting's good, So I think that was part of it. But there was another element, and it was really when I was able to apply some awareness to this other element is when everything changed. So I started following this new diet, but a week into it or whatever, that day came where I'm like, I want something different. I want some cookies or something. So I think I was at the supermarket with my mom. I asked for some cookies, and here I am. I'm at my computer desk looking at these cookies. And suddenly this thought kind of came to me, seemingly out of nowhere. And it was something along the lines of, I wish I could just not care about eating. I wish I could just eat these and not care. I wish I could just eat these and not judge myself for it. I wish I could just eat these and have it be okay. Can I? Can I just eat these and have it be okay? And I went and I had the first one and I enjoyed it. I had the second one and it was fine. And then suddenly it's like this awareness dropped into me, like I became aware of my body. And I noticed that there was no pull for another cookie. And I was like, whoa, this is great. Wow. No pull. And I put the cookies away and that was it. So I realized right then and there that there was obviously a connection between me judging myself and feeling guilt and shame for having given in and how I behaved afterwards. And I didn't know that at the time. There didn't seem to be the awareness of what was going on mentally and how it was creating my feelings and what actions it was leading to. That awareness wasn't there. And if you're familiar with my work, then I'm very passionate about inner transformation, spirituality, meditation, mindfulness. This was before any of that. This was before reading anything, taking up any practices, going on retreats, talking to teachers. But it was a profound awakening, It was a profound realization that there was a connection here between my mind and my emotions and how I acted, and there was obviously a connection between me judging myself. And so it seems that the perhaps even stronger driving force behind the gorging was just wanting to bury myself to not feel the guilt and shame that I was imposing on myself. So it was just kind of this sense, I don't even want to feel it. So it was partly this like, I got to just get it now because I'll never have it again. And the other was like, I just don't want to feel this crap that I wasn't aware I was, doing to myself perhaps at the time. So from that point forward, anytime those old kind of ideas or feelings came that I shouldn't even want this or crave this, immediately they were countered by, no, actually it's okay. It's okay for me to want this, to crave this, and I can even enjoy it. I could enjoy thinking about having this General Tso's chicken or whatever. I can enjoy it. I can enjoy thinking about having those chips or that Snickers bar or whatever, and I can't wait to have it on Friday when I decide to have it on my cheat day. But until then, I'm just going to follow this diet. And I gave myself permission, even within that diet, to add as much flavor as I could to the meals to make them as enjoyable as possible, while still sticking with the nutritional content I was looking to stick with for that particular diet. And for the next 2 years, I was able to follow quite strict diets, and without any issue. I went on the bulking phases, the cutting phases. Bodybuilding became a pretty big part of my life for a couple years, and it helped give structure, and so overall it was a good experience. So these days, I'm no longer a bodybuilder. All of this was like 20 years ago, but even after those 2 years, all sorts of stuff happened. But basically now, I just do my best to kind of eat what feels right. There's no super structure in it. I do my best to seek out healthy, balanced meals, but I'm not obsessive about it. If I feel like just having some pizza one day, I'll have some pizza, whatever just feels right. And I do see that there's nutrition in all of it as well. And same with exercise. I just kind of go when it feels right. Sometimes I feel like I could go more. Sometimes I feel like, okay, that's enough. You got to find what works for you. And basically, I'm just at the place where whether I live up to what seems to be the best way to do it or not, it's okay. I'm not judging myself for it. I'm just allowing myself to live. And I would even say that I sometimes consciously overeat or consciously partake in emotional eating. And I think many people can relate to that. I would say sometimes there's a meal I'm having that's just like really good. And in that moment, I'm like, yeah, I feel like I don't really need any more, but I'm just going to finish this because it's really good. Or maybe eat a little more. And maybe even afterwards, I feel a little sluggish, like, oh, I didn't need to do that. But you know what? It's not a big deal. I'll walk it off. And there's no judgment, and there's no like, oh, what did I do? Or sense that I got to cover it up now. It's like, okay, maybe next time I won't do that. But even if I do, it's not a big deal. It's not gorging and vomiting anymore. It's not this energy behind it. So really, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just telling you that even these seemingly totally unhealthy patterns can be kind of embraced within the space of awareness and non-judgment, and I don't see them as dysfunctional. They don't inhibit my life in any great way. I just allow myself to be human, and it's okay. But for the most part, I seek out well-balanced, healthy meals, and I enjoy the healthy stuff as much as the so-called unhealthy. But for the most part, I stick with the healthy. So if you are, a teenager, if you're an adult, and these are some of the things you're struggling with, perhaps my experience can be of help to you. Even if even if self-judgment and condemnation is at kind of the root or partial cause for what's happening with you, it may not be as immediate of a shift with you. It may, but something to look within yourself and investigate. And ultimately, I would say that wherever you are, there's always a place within you that you can access, where you can feel just inherent peace and worth, and it's an okayness. We are more than a body. There is a consciousness here that is aware of the body. There is an entire inner mental emotional world that is invisible to the naked eye. And there is you who is aware of all of it. Getting a sense of that you, that awareness, that consciousness can be powerful. And that's one of the benefits of, finding some kind of practice that can give you an actual experiential sense of yourself as more than a body. It can help make all of this stuff give you just more space around all of life's challenges. Make it feel a little less serious. Make you feel like you have a little more wiggle room, a little more ability to make the decisions you want to make around every aspect of life. So that's one of the benefits of taking up a meditation practice or reading literature about inner transformation. And you got to find whatever works for you. If you want some recommendations, some of the most powerful books from my life, the work of Eckhart Tolle has been very powerful. He has two books really, two main books, The Power of Now and The New Earth. Those have been very powerful. The Conversations with God book series by Neale Donald Walsch. That's a series of many books, extremely powerful. A website called Pathway to Happiness, and by Gary Van Warmerdam. And he had an entire course of different exercises, inner work that you would do every couple weeks or every week, and I found great changes and awarenesses and awakenings through that. And ultimately it all started with one book. It was called The Four Agreements, and that is really where I could pinpoint my initial awakening to really something more going on. This was after the non-judgment experience, which was also an awakening. But reading this particular book for me was just an opening on a whole nother level, that there really just was more to me and to life, and it helped. It was really the beginning of getting out of a pretty rough place emotionally at the time. So those are all wonderful books to look into, wonderful teachers, and there are more, many more. So if you have any questions, if you feel like there's some clarification you would like about the experience, or if you just feel inclined to ask anything, feel free to ask in the comments. I'll do my best to answer you as soon as I can. Hopefully this has been helpful. If more insights come, or if I get inspired to share other insights from the past that have helped me, I'll be sure to share them here. And until then, you're magic. There is magic within you. And if you haven't accessed it in a while, I hope you find a way to do so. And if you already have, keep cultivating it and keep bringing it out into the world.